going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 prop and betting stream for the Open Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your betting exposure with a look at course conditions, stat averages from round number 2, and also any bets or deep dives that you've got for me in the live chat as well. And on top of just the pick'em sites like Underdog and Prize Picks, we're also going to go through some matchups on the sports books, a little taste of all of the exposure across the board to give you that game plan for moving day. So first off, hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Friday, ready for some weekend golf, and you don't have to wake up as early for round number 3. You've got a 4:35 a.m. start, so a little bit later than what we had for days 1 and 2. So you get to quote unquote sleep in across the pond, and super stoked for all of our exposure here. So like I said, don't be shy to say hi. Then also let me know any questions that you've got, but let's go ahead and get this thing going. So the first order of business would be course conditions, which today played a whole lot easier. And if you guys were around for that round 2 live stream, that was exactly what we were calling for. We knew with the easier pin locations, also the fact that the winds weren't going to be anywhere near as severe as round number 1, that it was going to play at least a stroke easier. And in fact, it played about 1.6 strokes easier than round number 1. So 71.4 average as opposed to closer to 73 strokes the day before. The birdie average went up. It was lower than 2 per round. You can see it got up to 3.3. Bogey average was also about 4 per round, went down to 3.36. So every single average here was affected. Fairway average went up almost an entire fairway from about 6.5 to 7.5. And then your green regulation average was about 10.4 in round number 1, ended up going up over a green per round. So like I said, across the board, you saw improvement. And for round number 3, I don't think it's going to change that much because the forecast looks eerily similar. It's not going to be as windy as the first day. Some rain coming through, a little bit of gustier conditions in the afternoon. In fact, if we scroll through a few of the different models, like this GFS model is calling for a little bit more wind, closer to like the low teens with your wind gusts, even to like 17, 18 miles an hour when that rain is coming through. This might play slightly harder than what we saw in round 2. Like if this GFS model might be closer to a +1 scoring average, but this ECM doesn't look that bad. It's closer to 10 miles an hour sustained. Not as much rain in this model as well. UKV2, this didn't look that bad overall. Probably closer to like a +0.5 scoring average. So we're going to go through pin locations, how those impact things. They are a moving day setup, I would say. Some setup maybe slightly easier than some other rounds. But because the weather is looking maybe slightly harder than round number 2, that's why I think both of those neutralize each other. That's why I think it's going to be about this +0.4, maybe +0.5 scoring average. And these other categories, so like your birdie average, I would say with the easier pins, like maybe it goes up to like 3.4 per round. Bogey average, though, because of that rain and some of the wind in the afternoon, I don't think that that one's going to move very much. 3.35 per round is probably a pretty good projection for Saturday. Fairway average, maybe it goes slightly down. Maybe it stays the same. I wouldn't expect that much movement there either. And then the green average, I think that that will also stay in the same ballpark. But if anything, if that GFS forecast ends up being the most accurate and it's a little bit blustery, a little bit more blustery than what we have in this UKV, maybe it goes down to like 11.5 or 11.25 per round. So hopefully it gives you guys a little baseline of what to expect from the course. And then when we go through these pin locations, you'll see that some of them are set up rather easy. So let me actually bring up the Open Championship site real quick so I can show you guys the exact hole setup. I don't have them all memorized completely offhand quite yet, but we're getting a lot better from that regard. And I'll show you guys the kind of shots that they're going to be facing because like hole 1 is a prime birdie look. You've got some easier par 5 pins. And then as you'd expect for a major, like hole 6 is one that kind of stands out. That's going to be a little bit more difficult this time around. Let's see, we got Dave down there. You're looking at Connor's under 71.5. Yeah, we'll talk props a little bit later, but welcome on in. You see, we got Mac down there. Your guy Hastings failed this week. Hate to hear that, but he's a really talented kid, that's for sure. So if you're close to him, just know that he's got a lot of potential. What's going on, Parker? You're absolutely loving Rasmus for the over on fairways. Hitting driver just 27% of the time, and he soared over. Yeah, I mean, I think that you're looking at the analytics. I like that you're looking at how many times these players are hitting drivers. That could be a narrative that you use to your advantage. What's going on, Sava, as well? You're looking at a Fitzpatrick under on strokes. I like Fitzpatrick, the way that he's hitting the golf ball as well. We'll fully deep dive the props that you're throwing out there later, but I like what you're looking at, man. We got Phil down there as well. Best of luck when you guys can get after it. And you said you got smoked today. Yeah, I didn't get quite smoked myself. Course read was there. I'm guessing you took a lot of fades then, huh? So I don't really get it. If you went with a lot of fades, you said you couldn't understand why the lines were so high. If you took unders, Parker, you should have done pretty well, right? The course played only plus 0.4. So maybe you got unlucky. I didn't have a smash day, even though it played a whole lot easier. But yeah, if you were fading stuff, that was definitely a mistake, right? Like live stream yesterday, we made it pretty clear that you wanted only positive stance plays. But let's go pin by pin and show you guys what I was talking about. So where's the Open Championship tab? Hole number one's on this front left corner. So it's going to play a tad easier than the first few rounds. This front left corner is a low spot on this green, so everything kind of feeds towards it. The issue is that there's a false front going on. So if you miss on the false front, it could go down to this bunker or even this left side bunker if you're favoring the left side too much. So this whole location, you're going to see a higher birdie average too, maybe like 0.05 more per round. You're not talking about anything drastically different. But the bogey average, I think, will also stay about the same. The difference, though, is I think the double bogey average is going to rise. These back pin locations, people were more so like bailing out towards the right side, mostly making bogey if they ended up a little short. Like, no one was really making that many doubles unless they hit it out of bounds. Whereas this front left pin location isn't quite the same way. If you end up missing to this front left, you could end up playing tennis or having the ball come back to your feet from that kind of a pin location, which brings in some of those doubles or worse. So you'd want to hit the green. You'd probably want to favor being long at hole number one, just so that you don't run into that false front slope. Next up, you have two, which is in the back left corner. This is an easy pin location, especially compared to round one. Round one, it was on this front left corner. It was hard to hit a wedge into it. The around the green shot's going to be very similar to today, where you have a lot of green to work with. You want to miss front right, I guess, at this sort of hole. The predominant miss, though, is to this front left side, which isn't the most straightforward up and down. So, like, I would say if you hit the fairway, you're going forward in two with maybe a 3-wood, you're going to see a lot of people making birdie there, particularly if you can miss it on the right side of the green. But if you're a little bit of a shorter player, you have to really force it down the fairway, and you're not going to have, as much precision with, let's say, a driver off the deck, that kind of thing. If you miss left, it's not going to be as easy of an up and down. So I think hole two is one where you have to hit the fairway, and you for sure want to be a power player if you can. Next up, we have three, which is in the back center, almost towards the right side of the screen complex. It's probably going to be a little bit harder than today. You have a lot of room to run up a shot to it, but it's only 175 yards. So it's not like we're talking about a 200-yard approach where it's really nice to have that extra room. It's towards the center of that green, though. So I would say that it's going to play to a lower bogey average than today. Birdie average, though, probably doesn't move that much. In fact, it might be slightly lower just because you're hitting a longer shot in there. Next up, let's go to four. Four is a front pin location. This is one of the hardest holes on the golf course. So even though it's a front pin, and if you're looking at the sheet, you go, oh, that's an easy pin. I mean, I guess it's an easy pin for a really hard par four, but it's not going to increase the birdie rate or anything. Like, no one's hitting it to that front corner. There's also a false front on the screen that makes that difficult. So what we get with these moving day pins are pin locations that if you hit a good shot, you execute what you're trying to, you get a reasonable look at birdie, like 15 to 20 feet. However, if you don't execute your shot, you're going to be down there and absolutely screwed. So, like, the par three was a great example of that towards the back. This par five as well, especially if you're coming in with a wedge, right? Think of it through that aspect. Maybe not so much like the chip shot around the green. Getting to that back corner, it just requires so much precision. Let's go to hole five next. That's the drivable par four. That is towards the back middle. It's slightly easier than today just because it's in the middle of that back portion, but it's up on a little shelf. That back portion is higher than the front portion of that green. So everything slopes from this portion to the left side that we see over there. So I would say slightly easier just because it's not as tucked towards the side, but don't sleep on that pin. It is not as easy as it looks. Six is a hard one. So this is one of the harder pins that you can get at six. It's in that very small back right cove. That's going to be hard to access. The false front today was a problem for players at six, as we talked about yesterday. A lot of people that were coming down this false front slope and ending up close to where my cursor is. It was moving on me there, about where it is right now, which was about a 20 to 25 yard chip, even if you were just missing steps off of the front corner. Next up, we have seven, which is a front right side pin location. I would say that this is the second easiest pin at this hole. A front left pin is slightly easier just because a lot of people missing at 7 were missing towards the right side. If you miss towards the right, you're slightly short-sided to that front right pin, but they have it far enough onto that green complex where it's not as much of a problem to get up and down. Like as long as you have a half decent around the green play, you should be able to execute that shot. I mean, I could. So these tour players, most of them should be able to as well. 8 is a front left pin location. That is the easiest one that you get at this hole. So it's a shorter par 4 as well, one that players will be looking to take advantage of. Next up, we have 9. 9 is a back right pin, slightly harder than today. In fact, I would say harder, not even slightly harder. It's a longer shot. It's a little bit more protected because you've got some sloping towards the right side of that green. That makes it a little bit more difficult. 10's a punch bowl. So 10 is always going to be like an easy pin location. This is the kind of stuff that you learn about a course as you see it in play, but there's a bull effect around this. So in this front left corner, if you miss left on this slope, it's going to roll down and come right next down to the pin. So like, don't be surprised if someone makes an eagle there just because of the bull effect that we have at 10. Next up, we have 11, which is on the right side. This is a long, difficult hole. So just like today, it's going to play to its furthest distance. So expect that to be a pretty tough test. Next up, we have 12, the easiest hole on the golf course. This is a easily reachable par 5. You had players today like Cam Young, Mackenzie Hughes that I was tracking that 165 yards into this green with their second shot. So this front right pin, especially if you're coming in from the fairway, you could have less than 200 yards and potentially even spin something to that front pin. Next up, we have 13, which is a middle left pin location, closer towards the front, I would say, though. It looks easier than today, but don't sleep on the fact that these front pin locations on firm greens aren't quite as straightforward as what they are at like a PGA Tour course, but a little bit easier than round 2, we would say there. Next up, let's go to 14. So 14's in the back middle. This is another extremely difficult hole. And in fact, this pin location, I would argue, is just as hard as today. Today, it was close towards the back corner of 14, which this is a massive drop off. You saw a bunch of doubles of people that went over the back of 14. Now it's a little bit further up, which seems easier, right? Because it's not as close to that back corner. But what you don't know about 14, if you haven't been watching as closely as me this week, is that there's a little bit of a slope throughout 14, right where my cursor is right now, which draws balls back. And there's even one, by the way, it brings it back and then off the green towards the right side. So if you're going for this pin and you miss a little short right, you're going to end up the whole way down here where my cursor is now. So that is already a hard hole. The pin location, not making it any easier. So like you said, like one easy, like you've got some easier holes set up, like, I don't know, 5, 4, I guess, in theory, 7 for sure, 8 going to be birdie looks. But then you've got some harder ones like 9, 11 mixed in. 2, I guess, would be a hard one too, even though that's an easier hole on the course. Let's go to the next one. So we've got 15 next. 15 is a front left pin location. So it's about where my cursor is now. It was easier today because it's a wedge shot in, but it's farther away from the false front. The false front at 15 is towards this front right corner. So, for example, Scotty Scheffler, I believe, hit it to the false front. So you would have hit the green, but it ended up rolling off. And it was a tricky up and down that he was able to manage. But towards this left side, it's a lot flatter than that right side. So I think that's an easier one. 16 is towards the left side of the screen. This is about the same difficulty as today, I would say. It's just a little bit further into the green, which you can't see it from the overhead view, but there's a massive swale about where my cursor is right now that players are going to be trying to hit it into the entire day and then just putting out of that swale and up and onto the surface. Next up, we have 17, which is a middle right pin location. It's a little harder than today, I would say. There's not a whole bunch of slope on 17. It is closer towards this right side bunker, though, which would be a kind of dicey up and down. It depends on wind direction, though. In the afternoon wave today, this was playing downwind, and people were even driving this whole location. And then finally, 18, the last hole is in the very back left corner, which we haven't seen any holes or any back pin locations at 18 yet. So I don't really know the makeup of the back portion of this green at this point, but I do know that the left side of 18 is a no-go, that it runs off drastically. You can kind of see the slope, even from this overhead view, where the ball is going to go down way into this rough. So this back left corner, I have to imagine is hard because missing left is going to be death. So expect a lot of people to end up short and right in 18 and then just trying the 2-putt for their par. So to go back to the averages, I don't think that it's going to impact our take on the course all that much. I had already gone through the pins, so I incorporated that into our course and projections for the field before. But that's why I said maybe the birdie average goes up a little bit, right? Even if the conditions are slightly harder, just because moving day, they try and give players a little bit of a bone in spots. Bogey average, though, stays the same. I even think there's a chance it could slightly go up because of the fact that especially in the GFS forecast, to go back to the weather angle, if this GFS, the one that's closer to 13, 14 miles an hour sustained, ends up being correct, then yeah, maybe that bogey average even ends up going up ever so slightly. So that's the course averages. Those are the pin locations for round number 3. And next, we're going to go through the board and some potential pieces of value we can attack, which I've already looked at the Prize Picks board, which isn't as big as Underdog. Prize Picks has 8 guys up for strokes. They have 5 guys up for birdies or better. 6 bogeys or worse. You get the idea, not a massive selection. Whereas Underdog has pretty much an entire board. And that was before we even went live here. I'll go ahead and refresh it to see if they added anything else. No rivals. I was hoping they'd post some rivals because those are nice for multiplier purposes, but we'll have to check on that a little bit later on. So hit me up with any specific bets that you guys want me to deep dive, but it can be process-based questions with how to bet in general, what I look for in plays, how I handicap a course. It can be a prop or a play on Prize Picks Underdog. Feel free to go ahead and let me know if you have those. And then afterwards, if you have any matchup stuff, you can ask me questions, but we're going to do a full take on matchups and try and find some value here together on that side in just a little bit as well. So if you're a matchup, you're a sportsbook person, just stay tuned for a little bit and we'll get to that. But for the next time being, the next, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes, I guess it depends how many questions we've got and how long it takes us to find some value. Let's see what we could do on Underdog and Prize Picks. And we got Ernie down there. What's going on? You did the smoke. Okay. I thought you were saying you did terribly, Park. And because I was really surprised by your comment. You're like, you're surprised they're so low. It was low. Now I get what you're saying. Normally when I say I got smoked, it means the opposite. Like you say, you absolutely smoked today. You didn't get smoked. You did the smoking. So, hey, you're smoking on that Underdog pack, that Prize Picks pack. I'm not sure what sportsbook you use a lot of, but hey, put it up in the blunt, I guess, and spark it up. That's what my buddies say with that stuff. They're, smoking on the op pack, I guess. What's going on, Ernie? Welcome on in. I'm looking at a Rombo bounce back, says James. I think that it's within the cards. I talked him up on my DFS stream earlier because he's somebody that gained ball striking and lost 2 strokes putting. The 2 strokes putting is more so, but I really think makes him set up well for a bounce back because even if he's just a neutral in that category, he shoots -1. And if he gains 1 to 2 strokes, which is along lines his baseline, he's a really good putter, then that would be going from like a -1 to a -3 round. So I think he sets up well for fantasy, even prop wise. If you want to look at that too, he would make sense. I appreciate the kind words, Gritty Gang. You're becoming a regular on the chat, so nice to see you around here again. He said, how unlucky was it on the Bobby 3-ball? Yeah, for sure, dude. I mean, Bryson -6, we weren't expecting that one. I mean, you shoot -5 on a 3-ball, you're going to win 90% of the time. So yeah, unlucky on that one for sure. You ended up sticking with Bryson today and it paid off. There you go. Yeah, I used him in fantasy. I thought he was a great long shot play, but I think he was even surprised with how he played. If you saw his interview after the fact, he talked about being frustrated, thinking that he was probably going to get mad, pissed at himself and whatnot. But all the power to him. You love to see somebody growing, somebody kind of growing up in front of you. And Bryson's doing that, right? Bryson's no longer that hothead player that's reacting on the golf course and letting it impact him. Today, I think, was a great example of that. And Justin Thomas, I think, is a great example of that too. He's been doing this for years, though. He'll have a terrible round one. He'll shoot 80 like he did at the Players, and then he'll shoot like 61, 62 the next day. There's a mindset to that. It pays rewards long term. I mean, I'm sure the paycheck was nice that JT got at the Players Championship that week, but it also teaches you a lot mentally in the process. So I'm glad for Bryson to be able to do that because in the past, he hasn't been that type of guy, right? He's been a little bit more reactionary. You were thinking that the hole props on betting on hole 1 birdies with the front pin, but watching the YouTube flyover, it seems like it could be between 2 ridges. Let's actually go back to that. So you're talking about some sloping on hole number 1. I can't see it from the overhead view, I wouldn't think, but maybe if we zoom in, we can see that there. I do know that there's a really big slope towards the middle right side of one. So about where my cursor is now. So like the front right pin's super easy. The false front is one of the ridges that you're talking about. And then you're saying that there's one behind it. I'm guessing like another ridge there. I don't think that's terrible for birdies, actually. I mean, it's a hard hole. It's one of the hardest holes on the golf course. So if you're going to take a birdie prop there, it's got to be pretty plus money for you to be considering that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't think it's in a terrible spot for it. Like the false front is going to hurt players a little bit, but there is some back to front slope on this hole that could help players make birdie. But the issue is you're not spinning it off that slope, right? So that second slope that's in the green here, it's not severe enough to really spin something off of it. And the other part is because you're having, I mean, the shortest I saw into this hole, I think was like 140. And that was somebody that smashed a driver when it wasn't as windy. Most players have like 160 to 200 yards into hole number one. With that kind of distance, you can't really take advantage of a backstop. So yeah, let's see. What were you saying? Let me know if you have the odds on that, by the way. I think sneaky hard. I don't know if I would say that, but it's also not easy. Like I think it's a pretty neutral hole location. Definitely not one that's like the hardest on the hole. The hardest was round number one. Round one in that back right corner where it was not only tucked back there, a long shot, and on the high point. It's like putting the cookies on the top shelf of the pantry, right? It's like hard to reach back there. You put it back there so people can't score. The front pin, not so much. You're looking at Spieth over 11.5 greens. He's juiced towards the over. I'm just a little bit sketched out by Spieth in his wrist. All year, he's been struggling with the irons. So I personally don't agree with that minus 130 juice, and that's coming from a Jordan Spieth truther. He's one of my favorite players in the world, and even I really can't get behind that one. So I would tread with caution there. That minus 130 really doesn't mean that much either, right? It's not even into the plus EV range. Unless you just love the stat profile. I mean, he did play well on approach today. Round one, though, he lost almost 2 strokes to the field. So that's what makes me a little bit more sketched out about it. Am I targeting players who did below average today to bounce back, or targeting players that did well today to continue it? That's not really how I look at it, Jonathan. It's a lot more nuanced than that, because the answer to your question is if they played below their baseline, but they were okay ball striking, yeah, I think that they could have a pretty good bounce back spot. On the flip side, though, if they were somebody that played well, but they did it all with the short game, I wouldn't expect them to necessarily continue that the next day. So if you want a full take on how I look at the stats and how I evaluate them, the DFS live stream would probably be a little bit better for that. We spend a lot of time talking about statistical regression, how players grade out, all of that over there, more of like the projection side of things. Here, it's more so like strokes, birdies. We still talk about some of that kind of stuff, but we're not going to do like a full segment on how to break down those players. That's a very complicated topic that you brought up, not something where like that kind of answer, like, oh, they played bad, we'll take them for a bounce back, or they played good, they're going to continue it. It's that's like way too simple, I would say, for trying to break down that kind of stuff. And you're not really going to learn anything from using that sort of thing. You're looking at Spieth and Connors for the under 71.5. I was kind of looking at Spieth at 71.5 too, but I am kind of sketched out. Like even with that green line, man, I'm just a little hesitant on a guy that was injured last month, that even when he wasn't injured, wasn't playing that well this year. And I hate to crap talk my guy, because like I said, he's literally my favorite player in the world, but it's true. It's the truth. He has not been that good this year. So to take a positive stance play is, I think, a little bit of a risky proposition. But on the other side of it, Connors too at 71.5. He was injured. I'm a little bit less concerned about Corey because he's played better this year. Like if you compare the baseline of those two players, Corey clearly the better form in 2025. So yeah, between those two, I'd be okay with the Connors one a little bit more. Under 71.5 means he's got to shoot even par, which I think is pretty reasonable with a half a stroke over par scoring average. I mean, half a stroke over par, that's gaining a half a stroke to the field. Corey Connors does that on the regular on the PGA Tour. If he had no injury at all, let's say that, last 2 months he's been playing and doing his normal stuff, that's a no-brainer. Like that's like, yes, for sure. You're playing Corey Connors. With the injury stuff, you just add that little bit shadow of doubt to it. It's something that I wouldn't enter myself. It's the same thing with the Jordan Spieth one, right? Like I understand the lean even over birdies, over greens or the under on strokes. But that little bit of doubt, I just know that there's better spots. There's so many players in this field. There's so many options, projections available that I'd prefer to take something that doesn't have that aspect to it. But I agree with the takes in a vacuum. Like in a vacuum, both of those players, if you put the injuries aside, I would be around that kind of stuff. You got Spawn under 71.5, or maybe Tommy under 70.5 too. I was more so looking at Tommy. A Spawn 71.5, not terrible, but Spawn, a player that doesn't have a lot of Lynx history, not really somebody I'd want to be going after in this kind of field. Like, there are better options, players that have Lynx experience. Today, by the way, JJ Spawn luck sacked it. He completely lucked out. I played him for a prop too, so I completely got away with it. He should not have hit for me. Yeah, he ended up doing it. And round one, he lost strokes ball striking. So I don't love that. Am I targeting mostly positive stance plays? I am not. I think that it's a balanced slate. So yeah, you guys asking about all these unders and whatnot, I don't necessarily think that that's what I'm going to play. Bob is plus money for the 70.5 under. Yeah, I agree with that. He said he lost strokes putting today and still shot 5 under. Seems to be too good to be true. I'm not sure it's too good to be true, man. I mean, let's just break it down, because a lot of you guys are asking about unders on strokes. If I think the scoring average is going to be a half a stroke over par, that's a 71.5, right? So those guys at 71.5 strokes, that means those sports books are projecting them as average plays. Jordan Spieth should be at the average. This is a major championship field. We got all the good live guys here. Got all the best PGA, DP World Tour guys playing in the same kind of field. Spieth's been average on the PGA Tour. So, like, I understand that kind of projection. A Spawn without Lynx history, I think he's probably an average play in this kind of field. And let's go to the Bobby Mack one, right? Bobby Mack, he's a stroke better than that field average. To go under it, he's going to have to gain 1.5 strokes to the field. That's not something that he does every single round. In fact, his baseline's closer to like 0.8 to 0.9 strokes per round. And that's this year, which is by far his best year of his career. So those players, too good to be true? Absolutely not. I would say that I think it makes sense in a lot of those cases. And in fact, my personal take on this board, at least what I was looking at before, is I think the value's on fades, especially for like some unders on birdie. So we'll talk about potential options for that. But I would say, like, you can find some unders, like I said, like the Tommy Fleetwood one. I was looking at that. Like, I was even considering Spieth for a little bit. Not going to do it though, based on, some of the injury stuff. There can be some positive stance plays that make sense, because I don't think the board's too far off. But fades were really easy for me to find. There's like easy values to take for unders on birdies and overs on strokes. You're looking at Bryson at 70.5. Yeah, I'm guessing you're a Bryson fan, right? Based on your comment and stuff. At 70.5 strokes, I believe he was juiced towards the over. So if you're going to take him on a sports book where you can get a fair value for it. He said Fitz to shoot par at plus 100 seems crazy considering how he's playing. Under par is -1, right? Let's go through that same exercise. So scoring average, half a stroke over par. That's what it was today. I think that's very reasonable to expect. That means he's got to gain 1.5 strokes to the field. That's something that for Matt Fitzpatrick, at least for 2025, is below his baseline, right? He's averaging probably closer to a half a stroke gained per round. Now, his form over the last 12 measured rounds, a whole lot better than that. He's gaining close to 2 strokes per round. So if you look at the recent form stats, you may get like, okay, it makes sense, right? Why you would have him slightly better than other players, but not crazy to have him at that kind of number, man. That's it's a hard golf course. I know he's played well the first few rounds, but golf's a variant sport. Just because you played well for the first few days does not mean that's going to happen the next day. Look at your DMs. I will when I can later. Good call on that. And by the way, that's about the book, right? I'll definitely get back to you on it. What's going on? He said thoughts on Rahm under 69.5 and JT over 3.5 birdies. I was looking at the over on JT birdies. We're going to talk about birdies a lot here. I think that's where most of the value on the board is personally. The under 69.5 though, I don't know if I can get there, man. I mean, that's shooting -2. That's gaining 2.5 strokes to the field. Jon Rahm, if he was in form, if he was at full flight, I wouldn't have as much of an issue with that. But Jon Rahm, kind of sketchy form, right? He lost strokes putting today. I would want at least plus money on that sort of an under, or I would want a multiplier like 1.1 to 1.5, 1.2x on a site like Underdog. So I'm not exactly sure where his odds are. I really haven't been looking at the sportsbook odds all that much. But yeah, that's I don't know, man. These unders you guys are looking at, I get the players, I like the players, but I don't think that it's a board like yesterday. Yesterday, guys, they had the board a stroke and a half to 2 strokes higher, right? It's just such a different situation when that's the case. I mean, you can shoot even par and hit as opposed to having to shoot -1, -2. It's just a completely different conversation on how the course is playing it. It's going to play the exact same, right? I literally think course conditions almost carbon copy and paste of what we had from day to day. So that's why now that these guys are a whole stroke and a half lower, like I don't necessarily think they're value anymore, if that makes sense. You don't love anything, you would fade Spieth, Aberg, and Goddard up, but you don't love anything. Yeah, I don't I don't love any positive stance plays. I do love some fades. And yeah, you think the weather's going to get worse at times? I agree, Ernie. It's unpredictable, and especially when that rain comes through. But let's go through a few of the props that I was looking at. So first off is a Westwood under on birdies. He's at 3.5, and he's even money on the books. So if you're a plus EV slappy, then yeah, you're probably not a real big fan of this play. But frankly, I don't really care where the sports books have their lines posted. I think that they have it far too positive on guys like Lee Westwood. Because if we go back to the averages, the birdie average was, 3.3 per round. In Westwood, if we go to the stats on the Live Tour this year, he's like number 30 or something like that in birdie percentage. In fact, number 39 in birdie or better percentage. And it's not even just this season that Westwood isn't making birdies. Year before that, he was number 49. That's out of 54 players, by the way. And if you go to the year before that, Westwood was number 35 on tour. And then the first year they played over there when he wasn't as old, right? He was at least decent. I guess they don't have him from 2022. But if they had him, he would have been nearly last that year as well. So you're talking about a guy that on a tour that is slightly inferior to what we have this week isn't even making that many birdies. Why the hell is he over that field average? So to me, that was an absolute no-brainer. And there's a lot of guys, if we bring up just the birdie or better board in general, that I think you're too high, that are 3.5 and that are just sorry-ass players. So, for example, Phil Mickelson, I hate to pick on you, my dude, but at this point, you're washed. You're 50-plus years old. You're not even playing well on the Live Tour. And just to go back to that, let's go back to the last 3 years and look at Phil Mickelson. He hasn't been horrible. So he was number 19 3 years ago, but still, he's not a lead on the Live Tour or anything like that. Next year, so 2024, he's number 34 in birdie or better percentage. And then this year, he's actually played half decently on the Live Tour. And even then, he's only number 26. So he's like maybe an average Live Tour player, which means in this field, he's average to below average. How the hell is Phil Mickelson at 3.5 birdies over that field average? So those were two unders that I was looking at right off the bat. Want to see what I can find for a positive stance play, which is the holdup for me. Like the fades, and it's not even just those two. I see a whole bunch of fades that I think make sense, whether it's for bogeys, whether it's for overs on strokes. But I think especially with this birdie or better board, where they have guys projected over the field average that are clearly average to below average players. So the positive stance play, if we can try and find one, like for example, let's say it was like Xander under in strokes, that would get us to a 6x payout. So I kind of like that aspect. Like the payouts are going to be pretty juiced if we can do it this way. Let me see what Xander's at. So Xander's like even money at that number. What's Fleetwood? I think it was minus 125. Yeah, minus 125 towards the under. So that's what I was trying to line shop. And that's why I hadn't entered anything before we got on live stream here, is because I don't know what positive stance play I could really stand behind. Like maybe this Fitzpatrick over on birdies. Like sure, the average is going to be 3.3, but you'd have to think that Fitz slightly above average player with the form that he's had. I guess if I was going to take anything on Fitz, maybe it would be that. Or if I go to the prize picks side and look at that, they added a whole bunch of props. So we're going to have even more to go on prize picks, which is super sweet. But they do have Matt Fitzpatrick at 71 strokes. I know we had Sava asking about the 70.5 line. I think if I was going to play him, I'd do it at 71, which is an even par, because I think the 3 bogey line is adequate for him. I think that's where I would have him. This 3.5 birdie line, I think, makes a lot of sense too. So if we can get him at even par, right, and if I think both of these projections make sense, I think you're getting a half a stroke or maybe a quarter of a stroke value with taking that 71 there. So like on the prize pick side, I guess we'll throw this into the shopping cart for now, because that was, I guess, one of the few positive stance plays I was looking at. But unfortunately on Underdog, you can see he's at 70.5. And if we were going to take him, we would get a multiplier on it, but it is 0.5 lower, and we no longer get the push equity at 71 and even par. So that's why I'm having some struggle here, guys. And guys, it's not even me just like shitting on you guys asking about the props, by the way. It's just me being blatantly honest. I can't even enter a positive stance play myself because of the lack of confidence on that side of things. So I would say if you're playing other sports, like what I would do, especially if this was NFL season, it would be a lot easier for me to do this, is I would just take my favorite PGA leans and I'd mix them in with the NFL prop. That way there's no correlation rules. I'm getting the full payout on both of those sides. Unfortunately, though, it's not that time of year quite yet. We're about a month away from having NFL content again, which, by the way, I do cover here on my YouTube channel. If you guys are new, maybe you haven't been around for a while, that is something I do. They do have Shane Lowry at 3.5 bogeys again. So I liked the under 3.5 bogeys today, and it ended up working out for me. At least I think it did. He had that one double. That may have actually changed it on Shane. Let's see. Where did he end up? Didn't matter because the other leg of that slip ended up missing. So yeah, he ended up going under for us, only having those two. And really one of those bogeys should not have ended up happening. Let me see what his odds look like. So Shane, he's also minus 135 towards the under. I mean, this could be what we go with. Now, the issue with Shane is, right, is he going to be like a butthurt little bitch after having that fiasco today and kind of react to it the wrong way? I'm going to assume that he doesn't. And we'll play it for my max is 25 because I'm on this locked account. This is my main account that they have pretty much completely locked down, but I'll enter it for the max that I can. So it's an under on birdies for Lee Westwood and Phil Mickelson. And as you can see, it's an under on bogeys for Shane Lowry. And the idea there is that these two, again, average to below average players, they should not be over that field average. And then Shane Lowry, to go to the bogey stuff, I think the bogey average might go up ever so slightly. Like if it plays a little bit harder, maybe it's like 3.5 per round, maybe like 3.6. Let's say worst case scenario. Shane Lowry is an elite tier bogey avoider. There's no way in hell that he should be at even money at 3.5 bogeys. That just like does not make sense, right? For an elite tier player, guy that's top 35 on the PGA Tour in bogey avoidance, won here last year, has played decently well throughout the first few rounds, should not be over that sort of an average. So you got like some, contrasting trends here. Above average guys that are projected worse than the average, and then below average guys that are projected better than the average. Just like I said, doesn't really make that much sense. And then on the prize pick side, we can try and find a combination here. They just added a whole bunch of props. So unlike the small selection before, we're going to have a lot more to go through here. So they don't have a Shane Lowry prop up. That's kind of what I was trying to look at. But like, look at this. Like Keegan's at 3. Like Harris English is at 3. So I feel pretty good about the value we're getting at 3.5. Let's look at fairways, see what we're working with there. Looks like some 7.5s, some 6.5, like a Xander 6.5. That seems awfully low. Let's double check on the sportsbook line value. And I like to look at it on these fairway props just to make sure I'm not crazy. And yeah, like minus 135. So even the sportsbooks tend to agree on that one. Let's look at how Xander's done it this week. So let's see if I can find the right tab. Here we go. Driving accuracy today, he only hit 4 of his 14. So that probably has to do with why he's at 6.5. And then the first day he hit 7 out of 14, which was about field average, actually a little bit over the field average in round number 1. Today, only hitting 4 out of the 14, he hit like 3.5 less than the field average. So, decent round 1, terrible round 2 when it comes to gaining accuracy to the field. And what I wish we could do is to go through and see how many like intermediate cuts he may have hit. And in fact, we're actually just going to do that here together real quickly to see how many semi-roughs that he hit off the tee. And we won't spend too much time doing this, but I'm curious enough to see if maybe he just got unlucky and that's why he hit 14. So hold on, that looks like a semi-rough. Yeah, so that's 1. Look at this. This is going to be it, huh? So native area, that was like an actual miss. Native area, okay, it was an actual miss. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's just hole 1. There's another one. So hole 7's another semi-rough. That's 2 now. Regular rough, okay. That's a legit miss. Okay, you hit a fairway. That's a miracle. Not many of those in this round. Native area, another legit miss. There's a third semi-rough. Okay, so that's 3 already. 4 semi-roughs. And can we get a 5th? No. So that's 4 times. And he only hit 4 fairways on the day. So half of his, not half of his misses, but a good portion of his misses today were by like 1 or 2 feet. So at that 6.5 mark with the plus EV, like that could be another prop that we mix in. And then we're going to want to find a fade to offset and maybe make this a slightly better payout structure. And for fades, we could look at birdies are better. I'm curious to see if they have Phil and Lee Westwood up. So Phil, they don't have up. Let's see if they have a Westwood prop up. They don't have them up for birdies are better either. But that's 71.5. Let's go back to that. What are we doing? How do we have him at the field average? And I hate to shit on Westwood because he's a great guy. I've been following him for a long time. In my opinion, Hall of great, maybe not the Hall of Fame, but Hall of great players for sure. And he's juiced wrong player. I thought this was Lee Westwood for the minus 140 under, but Sam Burns is at 71.5. And sure, he's got some value towards the under. Sam Burns and Lee Westwood are not even in the same tier of players. Like Lee Westwood is just so much worse than Sam Burns that I have no idea how the hell they price it like that. In fact, I hate to double dip on a guy, but I kind of want to on Lee Westwood. I kind of feel like it's warranted in this case. Let me see if FanDuel has anything up on Westwood, because I know Draftkings doesn't, but maybe FanDuel has a lineup for him. Because I'm curious why they have him at 71.5. It just seems too low. It seems like they think he's like 25 or 30 again or something. The guy is he's like 50 something years old at this point. Like, to say that he's over the shelf a bit would be an understatement. One second, guys. I'm on my phone here just seeing if we have a Lee Westwood line. One thing I'll say about this FanDuel app is that I wish they had a search feature. It would make my life so much easier, not have to go through literally every single prop to see if Westwood's one of those players that's listed. I guess if I was on the browser version, we'd be able to do that. But yeah, no line for Westwood posted. But yeah, out of what I've seen on here so far, let's go back to some of these fairways. I know we kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that Xander line. I like it, though. I like especially the fact they hit those 4 intermediate cuts. Like, that's just not going to happen every day. 11.5 was about the average for greens. I don't think it's going to move that much from day to day. So we mentioned potentially like a Spieth over 11.5, but I'm a little sketched out, to put it lightly, on that kind of play. Let's go to the birdie line. So we tried to see if there was a Phil or a Westwood lineup, and there obviously wasn't. But let's see who else is on here. And Rory is minus 140 towards the under. I don't think I'm going to fade him, though, because it's Rory McIlroy. He's an elite tier player. Kind of deserves a little bit of respect because of that. And yeah, you can see on Prize Picks here, this is kind of to show you the value on those 2 ones we got on Underdog. They only have like elite tier players on here. Like Sepp Straka's number 2 in the world in birdie or better percentage. You got Wyndham Clark, major champion. You've got Tommy Fleetwood, for goodness sakes, who's at 3.5 birdies. How the hell do we have Phil Mickelson and Westwood at that number? That's just makes absolutely no sense, as we've talked about a few times now. Let's go through the stroke sports. So 71.5 is about what I think the scoring average is. So if you think somebody's going to have a worse than average day, you could take them for an over at that number. So for example, like if Jacob Scott-Olsen was at 71.5, like I'd be fading him. A Henrik Stenson, if he was 0.5 lower, like that would be somebody I would probably want to fade on a slate like this. Leonard, 73.5. Crazy that he even made the cut at this age. He's playing a lot better than I think most people expected him to, but a lot of 71.5s like I was kind of expecting to see here, and they've got almost everyone that made the cut posted. So respect to them for really giving a full selection of all these guys that made it to the weekend. But the lines, not all that dissimilar from what we saw on a site like Underdog. It's just that they have a lot more guys posted. So for example, like a Riggs Johnston, you've got Christopher Ryan and Oliver Lindell that you can choose from. Underdog would never post this many players on a board. So I think we're going to narrow this down to a 2-man that we play, because I don't see like any glaring fades that were standing out. Like I was looking at these 71.5s, and I'm looking for some slapdick player, right? That shouldn't be at that kind of number. Like maybe a Matthew Jordan, but Matthew Jordan's a really, really good links player. Like that scares me off a little bit. Let's see, does Aaron Rye have a line? Probably not, huh? Oh, he does. And he's at minus 140 towards the under. Aaron Rye to shoot even par or better seems somewhat reasonable. But even then, like I think this is really going to drive this home on why the positive stance plays are a little bit tougher to find, is Aaron Rye has to gain a half a stroke to the field, right? To go under that sort of line. This is an elite tier field. Like that's just kind of where I have his baseline at like a 71.5. Like I think that's fair. I don't think it's like a completely like value line, like in either direction. Like I think they did a decent job with a lot of this pricing, but on the flip side, like a Rosner at 71.5, like he's a average to maybe slightly a below average player in this field. There are spots that make sense for some value as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Westwood out. We're just going to make it a 2-man slip so that we're not overplaying a player. Like if Westwood goes off tomorrow, we don't want both slips to just miss because of one player completely tanking us. So I'll probably still get it in my portfolio. I'll probably still add that Lee Westwood over to another slip. But for the sake of the live stream exposure here, we'll go with these two for 2.75x. So a little bit lower than the 3x that you would normally get on the 2-man, but I like the value that we're mixing in on both of these. The Matt Fitzpatrick has some push equity at 71. He's playing excellent golf. By the way, just to show you guys some of the stats on Matt Fitzpatrick, not only did he nearly win the Genesis Scottish Open, but to this point of the week, he's gaining across all 4 categories. Today, into the green in all 4, and especially with his tee to green play and ball striking. And at round number 1, it was the exact same, gaining in all 4 categories. And it was a little short game dependent, did chip in for birdie at one point, so that helped him out with that around the green. But a player that, when you take a look at the entire event, is doing everything well. So that's why I think a Matt Fitzpatrick makes a lot of sense for that 71. And we already did the deep dive on the fairways for Xander too, which you just got to hope that we don't see a lot of those semi-roughs on the shot tracker tomorrow, because that is what went wrong for him today. Let's see. He said Fitz over greens could be good too. Yeah, I'm not against that. I will say, though, just to be devil's advocate on that, because I think it's worth noting, is that he's not the best green regulation percentage player. If he was ranking down like the top 25 a tour, I think it would be different. He's just a slightly above average player in that category. So in a major championship field, that probably puts him at about the field average, because this is a stronger field than what we typically see. So yeah, I would lean over, but I wouldn't call it massive value. Keegan Bradley fade over 3.5 bogeys is juiced. I could see fade in Keegan. I'm not a big plus EV guy, so the odds doesn't really put it on to me as much, but the average was about 3.5, and Keegan doesn't love that kind of golf, and he's juiced way towards the under. So I think you were talking about the other side, I guess, or you're talking birdies, and I was just thinking the wrong way. Yeah, it's a juice, or you're saying the over is with a multiplier. Okay, I thought you meant it was like minus 130, minus 150 towards the over. Yeah, as expected, that's why they've got him at 3 on prize picks, 0.5 lower, is because the other side of that is favored. So I would say the best place to take that, John, would actually be at 3. If you were going to fade somebody like that, take advantage of the push equity. Like on a site like Prize Picks, I know the push rolls maybe aren't always the best. So use them in a slip that's 3 to 4 legs, so that even if it does push, you still have a substantial slip left over to work with. But yeah, that 3 rather than the 3.5 does a lot of good long term. You said odds on that hole were about plus 600. Okay, that's good to know. You originally thought that it was a bit longer than it should be. You appreciate the insight. Okay, so you're thinking that it should have been maybe like plus 300, plus 400. I actually think the plus 600 is a pretty good line. Like, it's at a low spot. It's 2 things have to happen to birdie one. You have to hit the fairway. That's probably about 60% of the time players are going to do that. And then you've got to hit a dart, which is possible with that front left pin. It's a shorter shot in. It's not as protected in that back corner by slopes. You just have the false front really to work about. I would say at plus 600 average odds, you can give me a good iron player that's accurate off the tee, and I could get behind that, at least for like scatter shotting, right? I wouldn't put a whole bunch of money on any one bet, but a little 5-unit scatter shot, try and hit 1 or 2 of them for profit. That would make sense on that one. Thoughts for the Wyndham over 71.5. I could get behind that, Jack. I do think conditions, 71.5 being the average score, you're essentially just asking him to have a worse than average day. I will say, though, that if you're talking on pick'em slates, that there's better players for it. So rather than that, like, I'd rather fade a Rosner that they have at 71.5. Let's point out a few other players that I might rather fade rather than a Wyndham Clark. Rosner would have been one of them. I forgot, but there was a few. Maybe a Coke Rack I'd fade at 71.5. A Westwood kind of stands out for that purpose as well. Just because Clark's a slightly better player. I know we all hate him, and the whole Hulk stuff, we're gonna kind of clown him until he fixes it. He's a pretty damn good player. Like, we've got to say that. You've absolutely destroyed DraftKings props so far this week. Tons of unders on fairways and unders on scores in day 2. Yep, that's what we've talked up here on the live stream. So I'm glad that you're able to do that yourself as well. What's going on, Joseph? You said got an under on McIntyre and Haotong on strokes. What are my thoughts on that? So I do like that McIntyre is at 71 strokes. So kind of like this Fitzpatrick prop that we were looking at. It's the same exact story on McIntyre, and he's down at 70.5 on books. So I know we had a question about like McIntyre at 70.5 and whether I thought it was like massive value. Not at 70.5, but at 71 at an even par projection. And let's talk through the shots gained math on these two, right? A Matt Fitzpatrick at 71, that's 0.5 strokes better than the average. You're talking about a player that nearly won the week before and is top 10 in the betting odds heading into the week. Like, yeah, I'll give him a half a stroke to the field, maybe even closer to a stroke gain to the field. Same thing with McIntyre. McIntyre was top 15 in the betting odds. Actually, I think even top 10 in the betting odds heading into the week. Fits this link style golf course very well. Same thing. If you're giving me the push equity at that 71 number and anything better than that being a hit, I think it makes quite a bit of sense. So yeah, I could get behind that one. In fact, I might end up entering that one later myself. I think that's a pretty sharp take. He said, a little late, but let's do this. Hey, better to have you late than never. Any chance I saw the 2.5 bogey line of pick 6 before they took it down? No, I don't play pick 6. It's not available here in Florida. So yeah, didn't see that one. Just not something that I can enter myself. He said, Lee under 4 bogeys, 1 today and 0 in round 1. Yeah, you don't really want to use that kind of analysis to make your picks. I would say that like an under on bogeys at 4 on the right player could make sense, man. But let me be the one to tell you, if maybe you're newer to golf betting and that sort of thing, looking at like what a guy did the day before or maybe the 2 rounds before has little to no bearing on what you should be doing for round 3. It has maybe a slight boost. Like, you like to look at the stats, we ideally want guys that are playing decent golf, but it shouldn't be changing your projection on them really all that much. This is just my 2 cents on it. I've done this for 4 or 5 years professionally, so I feel like I may be qualified to give you some advice on this. What you want to do for projections is you want to look at long-term baselines. You want to look at a player for a whole season, for example, with their stats. You take the averages from the field. You take a look at where a player ranks in that specific category for the year. If they're above average, you're giving them a boost. If they're below average, you're giving them a little bit of a ding down, right? And then on top of that, you can take a look at round 1 and 2, and then maybe make a slight adjustment to it. So, for example, let's say, and I don't have the Haotong stats off the top of my head, I believe he's like maybe an average, maybe a slightly above average of bogey avoider on the DP World Tour. Keep in mind it's the DP World Tour though, right? So it's not going to be quite the same standards as a PGA Tour player. Let's give him average for the field in bogey avoidance. I think that's pretty fair on him. In fact, it's probably more than fair on Haotong. He's probably even a below average bogey avoider, I'd say, in this field. If we give him the average, that's like 3.5, maybe like 3.4, 3.5 bogeys or worse per round. It's not the worst play I've ever seen. Like, I actually think that it might make sense actually with that 4 number, but it shouldn't be the fact that he made 0 in round 1 or 1 in round 2 that's putting you onto that sort of bet. That is exactly what the sportsbooks want you to do. And here's another, it's not the whole reasoning for it is what I told you just now, right? That's the fundamental reason why you don't do that sort of thing. But here's proof of exactly that being the case. Prize Picks would not give you this last 5 data if it actually helped you. They would not. They would not give you this information if it was actually going to help you make good bets. It's the same thing on NBA. It's the same thing on some of these other sports. In fact, they give you this last 5 data so that you make mistakes. Because in a sport like golf, conditions change so much from day to day. Who the heck cares about some of this last 5 data, right? Same thing with like the bogey numbers. Like, who cares what they did for rounds 1 and 2? And there's a different pin setup, a different set of weather conditions from day to day. So yeah, if there's anything you're going to take away from this live stream, like, I know we talk about plays and stuff, but it's the process side of this. Like, what I look for in the plays that I think it could be really valuable to a lot of you guys watching, that last 5 watching, looking at days 1 and 2, a boost, I guess. It's a nice cherry on top if the traditional analysis is supported by what they've done days 1 and 2. But in my opinion, that's at like number 4 and 5 in importance. You should not be looking at that as your main reasoning. What's going on, Antonio? He said, thoughts on Lowry with the 2-stroke penalty? You thought it was harsh? Yeah, I actually stopped watching before they started going through the penalty stuff. I was doing projections, and by the end of the day, like, I usually just want to move on to some other stuff because I'm golfed out after watching it for 10 hours. That was the case, so I stopped watching the broadcast, but I saw Twitter erupt over it, so that was fun. It was good to see people get their feathers ruffled a little bit. But yeah, I think it was unfair. Like, a lot of times, PGA Tour rules officials, at least, a player moves the ball on accident because of a practice swing, and they end up letting them just move the ball back to the exact spot and then play without a penalty. So I don't know what's different with the R&A rules compared to what we have on the PGA Tour, but yeah, I thought it was harsh because I've seen a lot of players do the same thing before. In fact, Zach Johnson at the Players Championship, I was on the 18th tee, and he was taking his practice swing. I mean, he's infamous for this, but on the practice swing, he hit the golf ball sideways, completely shanked it. I laughed at him in his face. He did not like that. He gave me a death stare for it, but I was drunk. I was hammered with my brother. We were laughing at him in his face. It was brutal. I feel bad about it a little bit after the fact, but we gave it to him for doing that, and he didn't get a penalty. We both thought he was going to have to play the ball from where it lied. He got to re-tee, and there was no impact on his score. So I don't know what the difference is on that, but yeah, PGA Tour, he would have been scot-free with that kind of thing. You're looking at a DJ under matchup versus Ricky. Now we're talking. I like these bigger, better matchups under, and you guys know the reasoning for that. A lot of times we're looking for the extra 0.5. And where's DJ? Yeah, here's him versus Ricky. DJ is a good birdie maker on the Live Tour. So just to circle back to that, we got the birdie list up right now. Let me make sure we're on the right year, though. He's number 4 on all the tour. So number 1's Neiman. You got Rahm and DeChambeau up there as well. And then Dustin Johnson sitting there at number 4. So I wouldn't say that it's like drastically off because I do think DJ is an average to above average birdie maker. But Fowler's an average birdie maker. So they're not that far off in talent level, right? You got an average versus an average to above average birdie maker. That 0.5 probably takes Ricky from an average to a slightly above average birdie maker. So I think it's pretty close to a 50-50, but I would lean under because any sort of tie, of course, would be a hit between those two players. And the tie equity on these birdie or better matchups is massive compared to a lot of other props. So yeah, I could get behind that one, man. And hey, unders on matchups are like always a good thing for me. Like obviously you want to line shop it and find the one that makes the most sense, but that extra 0.5 means a lot more at a course like this. And something I'll mention too for maybe some of the people that are newer to these birdie or better matchups is that it matters more when it's only a 3 birdie average. If this was a birdie fest where the birdie average was 5.5 per round, 0.5 means next to nothing, right? That's like 10% of the birdie average. In this case, it's a sixth, a little bit under a seventh, actually, of the birdie average. That is a pretty massive difference between those two players. So that's why we have to really take that seriously for those matchups. Brian Harman, thoughts? So I like the fact that he's -8 and I played him in my lineups. However, anytime you get Brian Harman in contention, he tends to stiffen up a little bit. He's got the twitches going on, all the waggles. But I hope he plays well, man. I mean, he's a good links player. That's why I used him in my lineups this week. That's why he's probably -8, and he played well in some of the win this morning is because of that experience. But I am worried that he's going to come back down to earth. Like, it's just hard to play to that kind of baseline for 4 straight days. Hopefully, if he has a little bit of a letdown round, it's closer to like an even par, maybe a +1, as opposed to a letdown round for other players that a lot of times is closer to like +3, +4. So hopefully I'm wrong about it. I fear the letdown on Brian Harman just because he's playing a little bit over his head. He said, good advice. Hey, I appreciate you taking that the right way. Some people, when I tell them not to look at the last few rounds, kind of take that the wrong way, but it's the best piece of advice that I can give because the sports books, they don't want to help us out with stuff. And if they're giving you that data, I think that says a lot, right, about what they think about it. You said Glover for the over at 71.5, and that's plus money. Ooh, a plus money over at 71.5. I wish it wasn't Glover. I wish we were talking about like just some other average tier player because I would be there, Saba. Like if you gave me just like a young 25, 30-year-old at that sort of number in plus 120, I would be taking the over. The only thing that makes me slightly less about it would be the fact that he's got some experience. So we'll have to see. You said someone asked about how under 72, and you said not bad. Again, he's +1. Can he ride again? He shot 67 twice. Yeah, so kind of going back to the comment from historical, you don't want to use days 1 and 2 and use it as the gospel going forward. Hao Tong Lee, I love the guy. He's Chinese SpongeBob. I got a nickname for him. I watch him all the time at DP World Tour. He's not somebody that's going to be a world killer for 4 straight days, though. So I don't know. I'm a little sketched out by it with especially the kind of pressure that guy's playing with. Like he hasn't been in contention at a major ever. It's going to hit a little bit differently than it is with other players. You're thinking Scotty for the over 4.5 birdies. What am I thinking? So I don't know if Prize Picks is the place to do it. And let me show you why. So on Prize Picks, if we play it, he's even money, right? So he's just at 4.5 and there's no multipliers involved here. The issue with that is that you're taking essentially a -130 implied odds. That's it's -132 to -140 implied odds when you're playing a site on these sites. Like that's the kind of payout shift that you're getting. Well, if you go over to a site like Draftkings and we take a look at his line, I believe he's juiced under. So they thought he was -130 towards the under. In fact, now he's -140 towards the under. That feels like a spot where you would want to play him on a sports book because you can get +105 odds. Maybe on Underdog, you can get a multiplier towards the over. Just line shop it a little bit better. In fact, let's go here onto Underdog. Let me see where they have him. So he's at 4.5 and even money too. I would put a multiplier on that just so that you're not getting scammed on the odds. Is there anything I like from that birdie or better matchup board? Yeah, I don't play a lot of birdie or better matchups, so I'm going to pass on going over that one. I'll be looking at it a little bit later and posting any value I see on my Patreon, but it's very rare that I enter matchups just because a lot of times they're set up pretty well. You said Rom over 12.5 greens on Underdog. I'm not the biggest fan of that just because 12.5 greens is asking a lot of me. Hitting 13 out of 18 is, in my opinion, going to be gaining like 1.5 greens to the field. John Rahm is an elite tier green player. So if we go to the green and regulation wrist, he's number 1 on all the Live Tour and by a quite substantial margin. I know that Wade Ormsey has a slightly higher percentage, but he's also only a fill-in. So he only plays like once out of a blue moon on the Live Tour. I would say it's an okay line. I think the 12.5 is pretty accurate on a John Rahm. if he gets in the bad part of the weather, this is what I worry about with Rom. If he was only playing through the rain at 12.5, I would lean towards through the wind, I should say. If he's only playing through the wind, I could see playing him at that 12.5, maybe towards a slight lean towards the over. But if he has to deal with some of this rain towards the middle part of the afternoon, which I believe is towards the middle to the back half of his round. Excuse me, guys. I'm gonna get some water. But towards the back 9, he might be dealing with some of that rain. That concerns me because that rain's not easy to play in. You're thinking about Hovland for a top 10. I bet him top 10 pre-week. So, I mean, you can join the sweat for me if you want to. He's T34, so he's not sitting at a terrible spot to move up into the top 10. And I'm not sure what the odds are, Steven. So I guess go ahead and let me know what you can get. But that's some exposure that I already have in. So no pushback for me there, man. If you want to ride the train, then hop on board. It's going on. He said thoughts on Rom over birdies. You just feel like he's due for a bounce back. I mean, if you can get even money on that, Jack, then sure. But he's juiced towards the over on Underdog. And I thought he was like minus 150 or something like that. So yeah, they don't have him on Prize Picks, and on Underdog he's like 0.77x. Here's the issue with taking that sort of prop is you're getting no payout for it. I mean, you mix it in with anything with an even number prop. Let's just go ahead and just do that real quick. So if we took him with, let's say, like an under on Rory Strokes, that's 1.98x. So yeah, I think he's going to go over, but you don't want to take stuff with that kind of multiplier. Like pretty much no matter what, the payouts are just scams compared to everywhere else. Like sports books, you still get decent multipliers for like even minus 200 props. Underdog, you get literal horse shit for doing so. You don't want to take them if you can. You said they call him the Chinese hitman for a reason. I haven't heard that before, but dude, he is. That's a good one. That's a good nickname for him. I call him Chinese SpongeBob because he wears those glasses at times and he looks like such a nerd, but he's a funny dude. He's fiery too. When he gets into it, I really hope he gets into contention. I hope he goes under that bogey line for the guy in chat. Like, I hope he has a decent round, because if we get him in the last group or one of like the last 3 groups, it's going to be cinema on Sunday. Like, I can't imagine the kind of stuff he's going to do when he's under the gun. He's already a wacky dude. I'm sure it's going to be comedy. Thoughts on Rosie? I thought you said Rory at first, but that's Rosie that you have in there. So, I mean, he's playing well to this point of the week. Can't really say that much bad about him. He's just kind of like chugging along. Shot even par today, shot -2 the first round. Round 2 in particular was short game dependent though. So if I'm going to be nitpicky about it, you guys know that's what I like to do here, right? I could take questions and say, oh, I love that. Oh, I love that all night. But that's why you're not here for that, right? You guys aren't here for a yes man. So I'll give you the feedback that you're looking for. It was just a little bit too short game dependent. I like the fact that he was ball striking it at round 1, but I do worry about the fact the approach play, he was neutral round 1, and then today he actually lost strokes to the field. That would be the argument against it. But I mean, he loves these open championship setups. He likes when it's a little bit windy out as well. I expect him to play well for round 3. You bet Scotty top 10, Hovland 20, then Ben Griffin top 20. Yeah, you're good on that, by the way. You can vent in chat. There's never a problem with that. And yeah, Ben Griffin top 20, maybe not my favorite bet on a week like this, but I get why you did it. I mean, the form's fantastic on Ben Griffin. I think he's underrated too. So yeah, I wouldn't hang your head too much on that one. Like, I kind of understand why you went that direction. Let's go through some matchups now. So we got through all the pick'em stuff that I wanted to. Of course, guys, for every step I'm taking on Underdog and Prize Picks, those are posted on my Patreon page. So make sure to check that out in the link in the description to go out there and join that. We're going to have, of course, the 3-man stuff we entered. Also, all the Prize Picks exposure I get to posted over there. But with the matchup side of things, you've got head-to-head matchups, which honestly aren't my favorite. And we're going to do the regular 2-ball market, not the 3-ball market, or the 3-way market, just because the ties are awfully annoying. And I usually like going with underdogs just because I don't like betting like -175 favorites. If you can tell, like, I like getting some decent payouts for what I do, just because you can normally find stuff that's closer to like a 50-50 prospect at plus money. And I prefer to get like a bunch of those rather than play like a couple super juiced minus money props that you're sweating your absolute ass off at the end of the night. Like, I'd rather make it a little bit more of a, maybe it's just personal preference, but I just feel like it's a better sweat when you're not dealing with like -200 nukes. Like, it's just a little bit outrageous in my opinion. We got Sepp versus Hideki. That's, seems about right, I would say. Soderberg versus Stenson. Now, Soderberg's -115. He's playing well with the ball striking so far this week. Stenson's not playing well on the Live Tour. In fact, if you bring up Stenson's stats, we'll just do that on Data Golf real quickly. He's losing over his last like 10 events. I mean, he gained once, Good for him in Korea. He was slightly above average. I'm not saying that Soderberg's like way better or anything. In fact, on the DP World Tour, he's been kind of, I don't want to say struggling, but below his baseline a bit recently, losing more strokes than he would like. But between these two players, like give me the young one more so than the old wily veteran. Not sure if that's a good enough number to bet, but if I was getting like plus money on Soderberg, I would highly consider adding that. There were a few matchups that I was looking at on a Hard Rock bet before. Hard Rock, unfortunately, does have these set up as the ones with the tie. So my odds on these players are slightly different than what you're going to see on like Draftkings and Underdog. But we're going to go through this market just because, if you can, right, you don't want to bet the market with the tie. The market with the tie is just complete shit. It's annoying as hell to have to use. Let's see. Jordan, slight underdog. It's warranted. I hate to say it. It pains me to say, but Victor should be the favorite over Jordan Spieth. It's just a fact at this stage. You got Sanjay versus Dean. I'm kind of tempted to use Dean there. Now, my issue with Dean Burmester is he also hasn't been that good on live. In fact, he's been better than some of the other guys we've looked at, but you can see a little bit hit or miss over on the live tour side of things. Sanjay, though, if we look at Sanjay's form, he's just been downright terrible. If we take a look at his last few months, he's losing strokes a lot more than he's gaining. So the plus money on Burmester does make that one a little bit tempting. But the thing that takes me off that sort of thing, so I'll get back to the stat averages, is how well he's hit the ball in approach. So today he gained 1.4 strokes approach. Round one, he gained just under 2. I don't know. It's a pretty good iron play if you ask me. And by the way, these shots gained metrics is worth noting. I mentioned this on the DFS stream before. These are a little bit off compared to the Open Championship site. Open Championship site is just really hard to navigate. We would be here forever if we were trying to go through the shots gained metrics via the Open Championship site. The site we normally use, Bet the Number, which is accurate. They have the exact numbers on there, has not updated quite yet. So, right, normally we'd be using Bet the Number on these streams. They're the sponsor of these videos, so we try and use them over Data Golf 100% because they're better every single way. They have the actual data. These Data Golf numbers, by the way, if you compare them to the ones they have on the site, they're not the exact same. It's because of how they classify the rough and the fringes around this golf course. It just throws off the Data Golf algorithm, so they don't have the exact calculations, but they're only off by like 0.1 to 0.2 in any one category. So they're not going to like drastically throw you off if you're using these as the actual averages. Hence why I'm comfortable using it on a live stream like this. But keep in mind that when Bet the Number does update later on tonight, that is the site that you probably want to use for those stat averages, as they're going to be a little bit more accurate than what you see there. Let's see, you're pairing Rahm over 3.5 birdies with Westwood under 3.5 birdies, and you're getting 2.8x. That's crazy. That's a way higher payout than I thought you would get on that, Jack. So yeah, I like that a lot. In fact, if I can see what I can do with maybe not Westwood for an under, maybe I'll mix in another fade at 3.5. I might be doing so myself. He said, question, you're new to DFS golf. How do I pick players for rounds? So yeah, if you're playing DFS, Don, you probably want to check out my whole live stream that I did on that. So Ship It Nation, if you type it in on the YouTube search bar, you'll find the Ship It Nation channel. Round 3 live stream, we did it at, I think it was 6 p.m. Eastern time earlier this evening. Went through the exact fantasy process because truth is we need a whole live stream to tell you how to pick your players for Showdown. You've got shots gained metrics. You've got to consider ownership for Showdown. It depends on what kind of contest you're entering. So the best answer for you is to check out that whole live stream. So again, Ship It Nation, like ship like a rocket ship, and then It Nation is how you can check out that live stream. But all right, let's find a matchup or two. So we have the Dirty Dean one that was in there. Coke Rack, the big underdog versus Glover. That makes a lot of sense. Minus 155. Wow. If he was closer to even money, I would take Glover there, but minus 155. Sheesh. They're really going a little far on that one, I would say. Ryan, even money versus Jordan. I'm kind of tempted to take Matthew Jordan. Matthew Jordan's just such a good links player, but Ryan has played well this week, and he played well at the Genesis Scottish Open, so I guess he's a pretty good links player himself too. Look at that. Burns, big favorite over Westwood. How the hell is Westwood at the same birdie line as Sam Burns? Like, it just does not make sense. Keegan is the favorite over Højgaard. I would normally say that's a value, but Keegan really struggles at link style courses, so I'm maybe not as enthralled about that one. Not going to bet against Mac. I love McIntyre at this course, and I'll back him the entire week on that sort of thing. Maybe you play Haotong at plus 120. Oh, because Brian Harman to shoot way under par 3 days in a row, just it feels impossible. I mean, when he did that the last time he won the Open, And now we're at the Open again. So I guess if Brian Harman goes and shoots -4, -5 again tomorrow, watch out. He might be doing it again, adding a second claret jug to the closet. But yeah, based on these matchups that we've seen on here, I think my favorite's the Dean Burmester one. And I'm not against like some of these minus money ones. Like I'm trying to find the ones that I was looking up earlier. I think one of them was Glover, and it ended up juicing way more than what it was before. Like even a Johnny Vegas at -125, like I could see myself fading Phil. No offense to Phil, but he's just nowhere near what he was before. And I think he would admit that himself. Maybe a Sergio. He's a pretty good wind player going up against a Novak, who's a little bit more inexperienced on links and in the wind. When I get the full board on Hard Rock Bet, I'll be adding in some bets myself for this matchup board. But yeah, as is, I don't love these two balls. I just don't think it's going to be as much exposure that I'm entering from this side. On the Patreon page, just like the prize picks and underdog stuff that I'm entering before, I'll also be posting all the matchups that I end up getting to as well. But that's all I've got, guys. Best of luck with all of your exposure for moving day. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel here so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That'll, of course, include our live stream for round 4, which we're covering betting at 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, as well as the Ship It Nation live stream, which I know I told the guy in chat to check that out as well. If you guys are playing Draftkings Fantasy for this event as well, you'll want to check out that live stream. Again, that's on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. Check that out if you guys haven't already. That's all I've got, guys. Best of luck, as I was mentioning before. I see you guys there tomorrow night.